Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast, where we explore the exciting science behind heart rate variability. The material discussed in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. Please check with your medical provider to make sure any suggestions or strategies are right for you. Visit us at the OptimalHRV.com website to learn more about the Optimal HRV app, download a free copy of Matt's book, Heart Rate Variability, and also get show notes and additional resources around heart rate variability and its applications.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Heart Rate Variability Podcast with my partner in crime, Mr. Matt Bennett.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Not too bad. Life is going back to teaching first grade, so I'm saying goodbye.
First grade germs will be back in the house, my friend.
Saying goodbye to summer, Sarah, and hello to first grade germs. So, I don't know. By the time she might go back, everybody might be in mask again. We'll see. It's a scary time. So as we've ebbed and flowed with this pandemic throughout the podcast, seems like we're entering some weird new phase of this. So, yeah.
No kidding, man. Considering when we started this, right before, or right after? I can't remember when.
Yeah, right around.
Yeah, right around when COVID hit.
Yeah.
The topics are definitely, or initial conversation definitely has a theme to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. For somebody picking this up new, boy, we'll retake you through the last year and a half if you need it. So.
No kidding. That's it. Well, we're halfway through the Olympics. You've been enjoying them?
Yeah, it's been fun to see. I know we talked about Simone Biles. I still think that's a very interesting thing to see resonate kind of throughout the sports world and beyond. So even since our last podcast, she decided not to compete in any of the events. And, it's been really interesting. One of the things that I thought, and I think you're right around the age, may have been a little bit more formative for me, but, was it Carrie Strunker? I may be mispronouncing her name, but I think Carrie is right. It was like the young lady who, with a broken foot, did the vault and won the gold medal for the USA team. And there's been some really good stuff.
Wow. I don't know about that. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, I also remember it because she had a guest star appearance on 90210 too. So we're generationally, we're not that far apart, but
a few years can make a big difference at that time.
Yeah, when you got that guest spot on 90210 back in the day, it kind of meant something. So that's how big of a star she became. But it's really interesting to see, and I just saw something come out about a Russian Soviet Union athlete at the time about how we pushed, again, gymnasts being under just like tremendous risk for serious injury again. And there's actually some, narrative between her and the coach about she didn't think she could do it and how she basically got forced into making a jump. And we celebrated that so much for so many years, that I think that we've got this really nice reset right now. And again, Michael Phelps is, I think, also just being very, very vulnerable about his experience as well. And again, hopefully this opens it up a little bit for the rest of us to really start to pay attention to mental health with maybe a little less flexibility that we have to show up when we have to show up. If you think about, again, we're not flipping upside down, most of us, but you do our day-to-day work, whether that's being a parent, whether that's, being an employee. But I think there's some really good lessons here that I hope maybe changes our perspective a little bit on, is it really that important if somebody doesn't, do a sport? And just, I think to rethink this is probably really healthy for us. So it's been fascinating on so many levels these games have.
Absolutely. Yeah, no kidding. Especially considering they're a year late, they're being they're competing them in very strange circumstances.
Yeah.
And for this stuff to come out and continue to raise awareness around this stuff, I think is very cool and unexpected, frankly. I mean, that's great.
Yeah, I think it's opening up this whole new discussion. And Yeah, I think it's an exciting time, to be in the mental health field and watch how we went from nobody wants to admit they're struggling to people will get a lot of support for that vulnerability. And I think that's a good place to be. And we got a lot more work to go. But,
Yep.
I think these younger generations, the stigma around mental health is not nearly what it was even maybe 10, 15 years ago, which is really exciting to see. And I hope we start to pay our mental health professionals in a way where we will have the capacity to meet that growing need. Just because people are more willing and able doesn't mean that it's available. And,
Sure.
usually the people without as many resources and money are usually the ones that are sometimes under a lot harder stress because of poverty and have less access to those. So hopefully we also pay attention to building the next generation of great mental health professionals to come out here and meet this need, because I think we're in a really important time in our history as that's concerned.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So I got us a little off topic there, but I think that's good to sort of discuss up front. I know it kind of relates back to what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
But this episode's a little bit of a continuation to some extent of what we talked about last week, and as we sort of bridge the gap here between our sort of podcast frequency.
Yeah.
We want to reconnect with the folks that haven't connected with over the last I don't know, 2 months or whatever it was before we put the last one out.
Yeah.
And as we have some very cool content coming here, towards the end of August into September and October, what's on your mind today? How do you want to proceed, with the conversation from last week?
Yeah, so I wanted to just, we talk a lot about with heart rate variability and our app, and kind of one of the ways we looked at it was sort of the N of one. And when I say N of one, in the research studies that you'll see, you always have an N, which is the number of people in the study. And with heart rate variability, there's been population norming and a whole lot of things with larger N's. But what I really love about HRV is that N of one, and questions that you can ask, about yourself and your own health and wellness. And so I would like to share just a little bit of some insights that I have had, not so much to make this about me, but to talk about kind of how I look at the N of one. So while I'll give specific examples in my own life, hopefully more so putting this out of, hey, how do you sort of take these scores, these numbers, and really kind of ask questions against them? Because, HRV, we know measures cognitive health, how well that prefrontal cortex is working, emotional, mental health, both the cognitive and the social health helps with this, the cognitive and the emotional helps with the social health and also medical health. It is a number. And so while there's a lot in that number, it gives you a number to sort of ask questions again. So, and I've been fairly vulnerable about this in the podcast, is that the last year and a half for a lot of us, including myself, haven't been an easy stretch. We've kind of joked back and forth. If you were to pick the worst day in our lifetime, maybe to launch an innovative app, it would probably be like March 9th, 2020, which was the launch date for the Optimal HRV app. But I look back and using this from an HRV perspective, kind of want to look back on some of the insights that I've gained. And Jeff, love for you to throw anything in here as well with some thoughts that you might have. But, and I've been pretty upfront. It's been a tough year, both all the hard work that we put in, investment we put into getting this app to the market, working hard to get some initial organizations working with us. And then obviously, again, March 9th, 2020, if you don't remember what was going on in the world at that time, just go Google it. It's right when the pandemic hit and all that focused. Also being where, in my small business outside heart rate variability, about 90% of my revenue came from in-person training. You probably weren't involved with a lot of in-person trainings over the last 18 months. And so, all of a sudden I went from looking at, boy, this could be my best year ever, and a lot, both excitement with, the new app and getting this on people's, ears and fingers. Had a great schedule of trainings all lined up. I went from looking really great. I remember at least last time I got in an airplane, I was, a visiting chair at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Like, I never thought, I don't know what that really means, but it sounds fancy,
It does. I agree.
I know, like I was a visiting chair. Chair what? I'm not sure, but hey, so it was like this.
Minor
like,
details.
Yeah, I know, but it was kind of fancy, TCU,
Absolutely.
top 50 university, all this kind of stuff. So I was kind of having a, a victory lap in my own head, at least. And, then everything went to shit in March, so, and looking at this with my heart rate variability was an interesting thing because, around that time in March, my RMSSD, if you're not familiar with that algorithm, really the why we chose it as a central measure in the app was it's the best researched algorithm out there for figuring out heart rate variability. And so, my population norm is about 23. So someone with a male of my age, 23 is really the average, even though the standard deviation is quite wide. So, I was around a 45 when the pandemic hit, which means I was doing pretty good. Again, with the big standard deviation, you can't do too many victory laps about, you want to compare it more to yourself. But, I'm doing pretty good. I'm almost doubling my population norm average. And then when everything hit, I saw that drop by about 15%, which doesn't surprise me of trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep my life going?
Yeah, exactly.
All of a sudden my income, I love being kind of a part of small businesses, love the lifestyle, but boy, nobody, if you're not making money, you're not getting paid. So
that's right.
It was like rushing to see how I could put scratch and everything together, thinking, do I have to actually go get a real job? Haven't had one of those in like a decade and a half. And so just kind of that stress. And I saw even though a 15% drop doesn't sound like a lot, it would be where normally I was starting to feel burned out. Like that is my early indicator of a 15% drop in my score. Again, I'm still above my population norm average, but I know I'm not at my best. And, with that, level of uncertainty and stress going on for 15 months, there was wear and tear, and I could really sort of feel that coming into this summer. Now I changed where now I can say about 90% of my revenue comes from Zoom trainings. I was able to adapt. We published a book we weren't planning on writing. So a lot of really cool things happened, and was able
Absolutely.
to recover in a lot of ways, but I never kind of got a chance to breathe. It was always like, I was trying to catch up, both just with the work. All of a sudden people transitioned to Zoom and everybody wanted to get trained. So just trying to catch up financially, all these different pressures on board. And so, that 15% drop, it probably maintained a 15 to 20% drop going into the summer. And I knew that was like a good representation of where my mental health was, is that I could still show up and do a 3-hour Zoom training and I think give at least 99% of myself, but I didn't have much to give after that. It was pretty much, I could go all out and then I pretty much had to crash, and then I could go all out again with it. And then, what I really kind of want to talk about is just to admit, I think sometimes the vulnerability of saying, a lot of these HRV podcasts, which I love out there, it's like, they dropped some Navy SEAL 3 miles offside San Diego with a 100-pound weight on his back, and he swam in and then ran up to like San Francisco. Like, we look at some of these people like just badasses, right? And like, as I like to say, we're just kind of the HRV for everybody else with this. The real people out there who may not want to swim 3 miles with a 100-pound weight on their back. And so, as I came out of this in I would say a tired and exhausted place. In my, like, when I think about burnout, I wasn't kind of having the shame, guilt, doubt, that cynicism and callousness, those later stages. I was just really tired, Jeff. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something. And one of the things that luckily, and with a whole hell of a lot of acknowledgement of the privilege that I was able to pull this off, was to spend the summer up in the mountains. And the mountains are why I live in Colorado. I love you, Jeff, but boy, those mountains are another huge variable in my decision to make Colorado my home, likely for the rest of my entire life. You're number 2 on the list, though.
It's a big drop off.
It's pretty small, but So I was able to come up here, and the mountains have always been a place, especially growing up in the Midwest, I love them, of a renewal. But, I was interested in looking at this, and this is where this N of 1 kind of thinking comes in, is usually when you go up in altitude, your HRV at least has a dip. Now, why would altitude dip HRV? Well, if you're not familiar with our lifestyle out here in the West, Jeff and I live a mile above sea level. So in other words, we have less oxygen. Now, I think we, our HRV scores at Denver, are pretty much our HRV scores, because you've lived in Denver pretty much all your life, or Colorado at least, and I've been out there 20 plus years. But coming up to where I've been spending the summer, it's another mile in altitude up, which again, I thought my scores, I would see maybe a 5% drop initially, and then I'd probably see a rebound later on. I saw the exact opposite. So here I'm in the mountains, and probably about the 4th or 5th day I'm here, my HRV jumps to, I get my first score in the 115 range. And just so people know, my highest before that, which was an outlier in and of itself, was like an 82. So I was like, whoa, like, what is going on here? I was like,
the opposite of what you expected.
Yeah. So I'm kind of clicking my reader. I put it on again. I try again, same score. And I'm like, okay. I was like,
this will work.
Should I go to the hospital? Like, I everything I know, this is good, but like, this is like 100-point jump all of a sudden. And then what I saw is it stayed up at that level, like consistently 100-point scores. And I had to like question, okay, what is going on here? And there's a few things, again, with more for thinking than, but also some things that really took out. This is one is, and it's hard. I don't live downtown Denver, but I live on a pretty urbanized street in Denver. A lot of townhomes, businesses. I love the street that I live on, but when I moved there, I could see the mountains, and now there's like 2 big things on both sides of me. So I didn't have much perspective, honestly. Like, I'd go for a walk, sure, but most of the time I was kind of cooped up in my townhome without much, like 5 feet this way, 5 feet that way, but not much natural light. So now come to the mountains, I can see 50 miles to the Continental Divide, 20 miles that way, 50 miles the other way, just these beautiful mountain peaks. And there's this thing that I started to Google, because it's something that kind of seemed a little out there to me, though I appreciate, I've seen enough of the science to talk about, but it's called forest bathing. Sounds very hippie, I know, but there's this and you can get hippie with it. I've seen talk to the tree, embrace the tree. And, yeah, I can go with you somewhat on that. But, there's a lot of really nice research, and some of it on HRV as well, about the impact of nature on your overall health and wellness. And
Yep.
I thought, okay, I get some of that for sure. Like that was part of my, I had questions of, hey, do I need to get my own mental health therapy? And I wasn't going to hesitate to pull the trigger on that. But I just saw like these jumps. And so what has changed? My diet's pretty much remained the same. Sleep probably improved a little bit, though I struggled with sleep just because of the altitude change. Also because I'm in a beautiful spot, I'm walking more. If you haven't been to Colorado in the summertime, it's kind of paradise, 75 degrees, sunny kind of thing. So, I was probably walking 6 miles a day. I stopped running, which I thought was an interesting thing to watch with HRV. And I'm not running mini marathons or anything like that right now, but, just 6 to probably 10 miles a day of being out in nature, hiking. And I saw this sustainable spike go through pretty much the entire summer. I woke up at 113 today. So all of a sudden, what I thought was amazing was my all-time average starting out, which was probably about a year's worth of readings, was like about 45-ish. And then I'm sitting right now, my all-time average has jumped to 70, which is just like when you start to take all those numbers into context, it's just pretty amazing to see that jump. The interesting thing, though, that's happened, and I know, Jeff, we were talking about this before we jumped on, is over the last about 3 weeks, we have had a lot of, not necessarily, we've been lucky, I believe, in Colorado overall with forest fires this year, but our friends to the west have not. And so we have had some, even in the mountains, just terrible air quality. And it's been amazing to watch my numbers drop, usually not down in under 50 most days, but in the 60s and 70s. And one is like, I'm not out as much because the research around this is the particles are so small, both for your lungs, but also your brain. So, and I'm not kind of going on the harder hikes either, because I want to make sure I can breathe through my nose to filter some of it out possible. So, well, my activity levels dropped, I would say slightly, because on good air days, I'm just trying to, I want to just destroy myself and go on really great hikes because I know we'll probably get bad air days like we have today. So even interesting now to see you throw a different variable into it, still in the same place, still getting out to the mountains, not enough as far as like quality time in nature, but I'm already seeing this decline, and probably some of that is its impact on my ability to do what I want to do. But also I'm really worried about the research coming out on what the smoke is doing to our lungs and our brains and our bodies. So I'm trying to just minimize impact there. But I bet, waking up with the sore throat, those sort of things, probably sleep quality. Now I'm seeing that this is lowering it. Again, not back down to the 45, but, sort of in the 70s, unless it clears up. And then I see it like today, bounce back quite a bit. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to share that with folks because, I think sometimes you get this number, and if you don't kind of ask the question, why this number, and this is where those 7-day trends, 30-day trends, all-time trends, I didn't think I'd get this powerful of an example where my all-time average, which just was a lot of data before these last 2 months, could jump 25 points. Like,
no kidding.
I'm a little scared. Like, what happens when I move back down to Denver? Like,
I'm going to be really interested.
Like, I don't want to be in red every day. So I'll give an update at some point about, what that transition, I've got one more week up here, and then, I'll be up here quite a bit from time to time, but I'm full-time back down in Denver. So it'd be interesting to see, what happens when that transitions back, especially it seems like we're hitting a kind of crappy stretch of air. The jet stream or whatever is dumping a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I just thought I would share that, not to make it fully about me and my experience, but like this whole thing of forest bathing. I'm like, oh, you hippies, I love you, but you're, without hugging a tree, or talking to one, but just being in nature. Pretty much, go out my deck, nature, back door, wetlands, and I've seen a dozen moose. I saw a bear on a hike the other day, a little bigger than I would have appreciated, but yeah, we didn't bug each other too much. So it's like being in this environment just been like therapy for me, and then some. Like I thought, hey, if I'm staying in the 30s, I was hoping some therapy, and please here, I may still engage in some mental health work, but my whole thing was, okay, I've got some time this summer. How do I recover? And it's just great to see and measure, to say, okay, I'm back, baby. I'm back, and I don't even know where I'm at. I don't know if I can maintain where I'm at. I imagine some maybe jump on a plane again and start traveling again. But it's just really interesting to see how even some things that I discounted, probably should have listened a little bit more to the research a little sooner. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that is most interesting about your story is the environmental factor.
Yeah.
That people probably, when they start to see changes in their scores, what all are you incorporating to attribute those changes to?
Right.
Is it just your job? Is it just what's going on in the house? Have you thought about some of these other things like air quality? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that most people probably aren't considering would affect this, but of course it can. All of that does, right? And so I think it's a good way to just sort of highlight when you see changes for the better, for the worse, really sitting down and taking the time to think about what could be contributing to it.
Absolutely.
A lot of it is stuff that's out of your control, and then that's okay, but understanding that is really going to help you change the way you're behaving, the way you're living when you can, and accepting maybe some of the things that you can't, right? That's okay.
Absolutely. And then like the question that I think we were talking about before we hit record here is, do you go out for a run? We know exercise is really good. We are huge proponents of movement and exercise. And yet I would probably, with the current air quality we have, I've decided not to. Like even, cutting my outside walking time down, not sitting out on the porch, which I hate because I got a great view and I know that does good for me. But it gives us a chance, to kind of measure this. And yeah, there's an exercise bike in the exercise room. I'll go jump on that for 45 minutes today at some point. I'd much rather, trust me, my mountain bike is here. I found great trails, like to go to an exercise room versus mountain biking in the freaking Rocky Mountains. It's not a choice I would make any other time, but it's like, okay, I've got data that says, I did spend a lot of time outside and here was the consequence of it. And so whether it's, like I said, whether it's pollutants, whether it's, buying an air purifier, these things should show up. Again, maybe not in the way they have for me, because I still can't explain the tripling of my score. Like, I think, spending time in the mountains is obviously great for me, but that just seems like even some of the experts we have on our team, it's like, what's going on here? It's like, well, my peak performers hit that level. And I'm like, well, that's not really me, but thanks. So it does just give us this chance to say, as life changes in whatever ways. And again, I think what HRV really did for me is during the pandemic, it allowed me to say, I'm not great, but I'm okay. And to me, that was sort of my mantra. It's like, I'm not great, but I'm okay. And I really tried to focus on, I survived this thing, and I knew it was going to be okay through it, but I didn't know what that would look like at this time when this whole thing crashed on our heads. And so, I think just saying, I'm okay. I'm still outperforming population norms, which, again, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it to some extent. But I knew coming in, I was not my best, but okay. And then to see, okay, what I decide my choices this summer, which I knew were going to be really healthy for me, were actually way more powerful than I could ever imagine. And so, again, it gives us a chance to say, hey, I made this investment in my own mental health. Here's the payoff of it. And now how do I take this back as I kind of get back to my regular normal of being back in more of a metropolitan area? I've been thinking about, hey, I've got 2 pretty lakes by my house. Maybe I try to get out there in those parks and try to walk around the lake instead of just walking on the sidewalk and doing that, and trying to hey, I've got nature. It's not Rocky Mountain nature, but it's still beautiful parks right by my house, spending more time there on the grass.
Or do you jump in the car and drive the 15, 20 minutes to
exactly.
get to
Yeah, absolutely.
Get to the foothills and get in that a little bit more often.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it gives me good things to think about as I kind of think about, okay, what's my self-care plan? Because Jeff, I want to stay in the hundreds.
I bet.
Kind of not sure how I got here, but yeah, I kind of like to stay here. So, again, even if and I would encourage, like I said, I think variables, I got lucky with the variables I put together this summer to some extent, because I was hoping I'd be in the 50s, but hey, now I know with my HRV burnout, what is probably my best? Yeah, taking a week off, getting back up in the mountains, great. And the privileged life I live, I will just acknowledge that I can afford it to get up to the mountains, and I have mountains really close by. So I know not everybody has that, but again, not everybody mountains are their thing either.
Yeah, so might be the beach, might be exactly whatever it is for you.
Trying to find your long bike rides, out in the country, whatever your thing is. But, when you find those things, putting those together, especially now. And again, I just want to reinforce to people recovery plans. And again, let's follow what the lesson is by what's happened in the Olympics is take care of yourself. That investment, it's not just for you, it's for your family, it's for your coworkers, it's for those other people in your life as well. And so I just wanted to kind of share my story of, switching some variables around, investing in my own health and wellness, what I've seen and the challenges that still exist. Again, I think too many people in these wellness podcasts is, I've hit self-actualization, right? Drink my shake, take my supplements, do what I do. And I'm just like, hey, I stumbled upon this and this worked. And, I think that, just gives folks permission, unless you're that guru level, which I don't think they live the lives they want us to believe they live, trying to find those little things along the way that, improve our wellness. And again, the great thing about heart rate variability, buddy, we can help you quantify that. So that's just the really exciting thing is not only is it maybe, hey, I enjoy partying with my friends up in the mountains or on the beach for the weekend, may not be what you need because you've been drinking a little too much, may actually hurt your HRV. So it's trying to find that balance. I find up here, I can have like 3 IPAs on a Friday night, actually wake up in the hundreds the next day. If I do that again on a Saturday night, I'm paying for it on Sunday. So I mean, I got my Friday, 3 IPAs. Then I switched to kombucha on Saturday and then pretty much don't drink the rest of the week. But, I've even got my IPA quantity really honed in to say, yeah, I can do 3 and that's pretty much it. So, yeah. And just for you that don't know altitude, that's like a 24 pack of Coors Light at sea level. So, yeah.
That's right. Well, you bring great perspective, and sort of a unique situation to be able to add it for folks. Most people haven't had such large changes in their lifestyle over a short period of time, and the ability to track what that does, for their mental health. So I'm glad we're able to share it. Hopefully people found that to be insightful and inspiring to some extent.
Yeah, and please reach out to us, share your stories as well. YouTube's a great place to get that. I know there's a lot of ways to get podcasts, but also optimalhrv.com. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear your stories. I'm always looking for new things to try. I know Jeff is as well, and we would love to hear anything you might be doing too. So and again, keep taking care of yourselves, and we'll be back. I believe our next one is going to start to reveal some big news that we've been holding back on, and I think I was counting up. I think we have 7 or 8 podcasts that are recorded, and so we'll be pushing out a more aggressive publishing schedule very shortly, which I know, Jeff, you and I are both really looking forward to.
Can't wait. Can't wait. And hopefully our listeners are as well. So again, everyone, thanks for the time. We really appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll look forward to the next one.
Take care.